And I think it's really important that stepmoms and moms alike allow themselves time and space to honor the transition phase that they go through when a new child or new children enter their world. However, those children do enter your world. So whether that's by adoption or birth or coupling with a child's parent, there's a very definite transition phase that every single parent goes through. Where would you take your life if you knew you could not fail? I get it. As a stepmom, mom, and entrepreneur, sometimes it can feel like what everyone else expects of you versus what you dream about for yourself are on opposite ends of the spectrum. As a woman, you're taught from a very young age what society thinks you're worth based on how you look, how you behave, and how much money you're allowed to bring in. But I'm here to show you that you can be the woman who has it all, and not just on the outside. I'm Brittany Lynch, and you are the queen of your castle. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Queen of Your Castle podcast. I am your host, Brittany Lynch. I am recording this episode in a bathing suit and Crocs. So there's a little visual for you. Thank you for joining me here today. Yes, my special Crocs. Yes, my new special flamingo Crocs, if you're wondering. I'm really excited to be spending this next little while with you, whatever you're doing, whether you're driving or walking the dog or taking a bath, cleaning the house, buying some gracks. I'm proud of you for, taking a few minutes out of your day to support your health and your well-being as a stepmom. I find it so easy to let the needs and the wants of everybody else sort of spill over until they become the focus of every hour of every day. And I've really noticed that for women, it becomes super easy to leave ourselves as our own last priority. So the fact that you're here listening to this today means that you have made a choice, whether it's been intentional or not, but you've made a choice to prioritize yourself and your well-being and support yourself in your stepmother journey. And I really hope that you recognize that and honor that, because that's really, really special. Now, the idea for today's episode, hence the outfit I'm wearing, just sort of popped into my head totally randomly while I was having a nice little conversation with my bestie. And when I started thinking about, what am I going to say about this? I kind of got goosebumps, right? And when I get goosebumps, I'm like, okay, yeah, you're onto something. So I'm really excited to share it with you today. And I really hope that you enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed thinking it over in my head to put it together for you. And I hope it provides some peace and an opportunity for you to really be gentle with yourself. I talk to stepmoms every single day from all around the world. And I know how much weight we carry collectively between us as a group. And there's so much sadness in our community and so much frustration in our world as stepmoms. So I can honestly say that nothing makes me more excited or happier to get up at the butt crack of dawn every single day than asking myself, how can I bring the most support and the most empathy and the most love and the most compassion into this space for these beautiful women? How can I make this load feel just a little bit lighter for stepmoms today? How can I spread some joy? How can I spread some happiness? How can I provide some comfort? So, before I go getting all teary-eyed, #INFP, I'll get into today's episode. Now, my best friend, Danica, who I was talking to when I got the idea for this episode, Danica just had her first baby not even 2 months ago at the time of recording. Yay, I'm an auntie. And let me tell you, he is so freaking cute. So now that she's sort of, coming to the other side of that fuzzy haze of the first couple of months, we got an opportunity to chat a bit and, spend some time catching up and talking. And, because she's just had a baby, it's impossible not to talk about the fact that she's just had a baby. So while she's talking to me about her experience, her experience of the newborn phase and her trials and tribulations, as well as her triumphs and excitement and pure joy at her new role as a new mom, I couldn't help but go back in my memory to when Rory, my son, was first born and when I became a new mom. And it was so interesting to observe the thoughts that I have now about that phase versus the thoughts I remember having while I was knee deep in that newborn phase. It was so interesting to almost look at my life like I was put in a time capsule, because these kinds of eye-opening realizations that Danica is going to have over the next little while, and this transformation that she's living through right now, I could really see myself in that. And I could see a lot of women in that. So Danica was, as the people in our lives often are, acting as a mirror for me. And she was showing me a past version of myself, a version of myself who was transitioning between identities and transforming into a whole new person. And it got me thinking, when was that moment in time after Rory was born that I actually started to really feel like a mom? Because I know for sure that for the first little while, I did not feel like a mom. I felt like a woman who had given birth, but I didn't feel like a mom. And he didn't feel like my son. I mean, cognitively, of course, I knew he was my son and I was his mom, but emotionally, I wasn't there yet. My identity had not yet caught up with my reality. Now, that sentence is very, very, very important for the rest of the episode and maybe for the rest of your life. So if you're not driving and you want to write this down, I'll say it again. This is like the big takeaway of today's episode. So I said again, my identity had not yet caught up with my reality. I'm going to come back to this in a bit, and I'll be letting you know what this has to do with you as a stepmom also very soon. But I think you might start to have some light bulb moments here really shortly. Now, after Rory was born, I didn't feel that instant bond that some moms say they feel when their children are born, or some folks who give birth say they feel when their children are born. I felt exhausted and overwhelmed. I felt terrified that I was going to make a mistake and mess him up for life. I felt this really deep sense of longing for the super fit, active body I had before I got pregnant. I felt a super deep sense of longing for this young, wild, and free lifestyle that anyone from my past life would have known me to have had. I missed my freedom. I missed my spontaneity. I missed my bank account balance. And it took me a while to even register in my mind that I now had a son and that I was going to be his mother for the rest of our lives. Okay. Are there any light bulbs? Are you seeing any light bulbs here? So the person I am today versus the person I was when Rory was only a few weeks old versus the person I was when I'd only been a stepmom for a short while versus the person I was before I had any children in my life. Those were all very, very different versions of me. I had very different identities throughout all of those times. I mean, of course, I've always been myself, right? But over the course of the last decade, my identity has shifted many times in many different ways. So while Danica and I were chatting about the ways that she's settling into her new identity as a new mom and what that means for her, I really began to recognize some parallels between the way that your identity shifts when you become a stepmom and the way that your identity shifts when you become a new mom. And I started to realize that there are a lot more similarities in the actual experience of the identity shift and the process it takes to get to the other side of that identity shift than I'd ever really noticed before. And, I've been working in the stepmom space now for a while, and I've noticed that there tends to be almost like a competition between stepmoms and biomoms. And with that competition, it's almost like one side is trying to invalidate the experience of the other side because they want to be acknowledged for the way it feels to live their experience. But I'm curious, how does it feel to you to know that instead of stepmoms having to one up her stepchildren's birth parents' experience or vice versa and deciding who has it harder and who got the shorter end of the stick, what if instead you could start to see that there are a lot more similarities between your experiences than maybe you had realized? And I'm not saying you have to go on and become besties or tell her about your breakthrough or I mean, you can if you want to, but that's not necessary to continue on with this exercise. I'm not saying that you should minimize the experience that you have or minimize her experience, but step-family challenges become a whole lot easier to navigate when we can find even one single tiny piece of common ground to occupy together. And I think it's really important that stepmoms and moms alike allow themselves time and space to honor the transition phase that they go through when a new child or new children enter their world. However, those children do enter your world. So whether that's by adoption or birth or coupling with a child's parent, there's a very definite transition phase that every single parent goes through. There's a very definite identity shift that each and every parent experiences. But one problem I just realized that I've been seeing is that I don't think enough women who become stepmoms are allowing themselves the time and space that they need to honor the transition and honor the transformation of their identity. And if what I'm saying is resonating with you, then this might also mean that you're being a lot harder on yourself and your stepfamily than you actually need to be. And if the rest of this episode resonates with you, then you might also notice that you've been building up a lot of guilt and shame and jealousy and resentment around your stepfamily simply because this space has never been opened up for you to lean into. See, when some folks who give birth to babies enter that postpartum phase, the realities of becoming a parent are unavoidable. Your body looks and feels different. You have a tiny, helpless little creature depending on you to keep them alive. Your social circles might change. You might feel different from your old social circle. Your relationships might change. The activities you participate in might change. The way you spend your weekends might change. Maybe your career or the vehicle that you drive or the type of food that you buy or the type of cleaning products that you use in your home. Maybe that all changes. And many biological parents will openly share this experience with each other, right? They have an open stage to share this transformation, to share this evolution, to share their identity shift. Because after a child comes into your world, everything changes. And because everything changes, in order for you to survive, and not just survive, but really thrive, right? Really learn to love this new identity, you have to adapt, right? You have to adapt to your new normal. And when you adapt to your new normal, this means that your identity has shifted. Now this new normal is no longer a new normal. It's just your normal. And for biological parents, I've noticed that these identity shifts happen slowly over time. You have 9 months, give or take, to get used to the idea of bringing a human being earthside. And by the time that the baby starts saying mama and dada, most people have started to accept that parent now makes up a part of their identity. But when stepmoms become parents, and to this, I also would like to add in here, a lot of women think that they're not stepmoms yet because they're not married. But if you are in a serious relationship with a person who has kids, if you're married or living together or not, I honestly believe serious relationship, someone with kids, you are living in stepmom territory. And I really think it's those really early days that stepmoms need the most support so that they can avoid all the mistakes down the road. But I digress. These dynamics, these stepmom dynamics feel similar for all of us. So, marriage doesn't make the stepmom. Okay, I'm done now. That aside. But when stepmoms become parents, wouldn't it also make sense that we honor the transition and the transformation of a change in your parental status? The same way that we honor the transition and transformation in a biological parent's parental status. If it took me some time, and has taken other women some time to even start to feel like a mom after giving birth to my son, doesn't it also make sense that it would take some time for me to start to feel like a stepmom after my stepson came into my life? Because after my stepson came into my life, if I look back and reflect, I can remember feeling very similarly to how I felt after my son was born. It took time for me to bond with my son as my son. It took time for me to bond with my stepson as my stepson. And after my stepson came into my life, similarly to how I felt when my son came into my life, back then, I started to feel different than my old friend circle, right? My priorities changed when I became a stepmom. My lifestyle changed when I became a stepmom. I chose to start reading and researching parenting styles, right? I would have never picked up a parenting book in my life until my stepson came into my world. And the same way I wasn't born knowing how to be a mother, I wasn't born learning how to be a stepmom either. Parenting is a skill. Arguably, it's the most important skill on this planet. Competent parenting is the most important skill on this planet. But it's a skill, which means that it's learned. And skills take practice to master. And you're going to mess up, and you're going to make mistakes, and the kids are going to mess up, and your spouse is going to mess up, and you're going to step on Lego, and you're going to be fuming mad when they miss curfew. And you're going to have to dance that really delicate dance of like, how do we respect privacy now that they're older? And so, like I'd mentioned at the beginning of this episode, after Rory was born, my identity had not caught up with my reality. My reality was that I was a mother, but in my identity, I wasn't. And all-night feedings and diaper changes can really feel overwhelming to someone who still identifies as the stepmom to a boy who sleeps through the night and doesn't poop his pants, right? The same way that your first family vacation with your partner's kids can feel really overwhelming to someone who still identifies as a single gal who loves her freedom. And we do a lot of work inside the stepmom story around identity because it's so important that we match who we are on the inside, the person you identify as, with the type of life that you want to live. Because the secret to making it in this biz, and I'm not talking about showbiz, I'm talking the stepmom biz, but the secret sauce to making it in this biz is creating an identity that works for you, that makes you excited to put your feet on the ground at the butt crack of dawn, that makes you go to bed at night with so much joy in your heart that you find it hard to fall asleep. By honoring those transformations, by accepting that transformation is messy. Like I think I read somewhere that when caterpillars metamorphosize into butterflies, they basically turn into goo, right? They go in their chrysalis or their cocoon and they turn into goo before they come out as butterflies. And I mean, that's not fact checked, but the metaphor feels good right now. So I'm just going to run with it. And I really hope that this episode has maybe given you some different language to use to look at, why does it feel so overwhelming? Why do I feel like I've lost so much by becoming a stepmom? Isn't this supposed to be exciting, right? Like I just gained a partner and some kids. Shouldn't that feel like I won, right? Why do I feel like I'm losing? But if you are feeling that way, this is totally normal. It's totally normal for parents to feel like they have lost parts of themselves through this transition. But ultimately, the parts of yourself that you are choosing to let go of because it serves you, because it enhances your new identity, because it contributes to your new identity, those choices are up to you, right? The beautiful part about realizing you have an identity is that it gives you the opportunity to make some choices about what that identity means to you, about what you want that identity to look like for you. So if you are in the goo right now, if you are the caterpillar who has turned to goo right now, and you are in the middle of an identity change, you are in the middle of a shift, you are in the middle of a transition, you are in the middle of letting go of the version of you that you were before you became a stepmom, and really stepping into the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful life that you have now as a stepmom. If you are in that middle phase, if you are in the goo, embrace that. Embrace that, lean into that, revel in the goo. Because your wings are just around the corner. I hope this episode got your wheels turning and showed you just how powerful you are. I would invite you to take 30 seconds and tap subscribe to this podcast. When you subscribe to the podcast, then rest assured you will never miss an episode. And in no time, spinning your wheels will be a thing of the past. Thank you for listening and subscribing. And if you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the absolute world to me if after you subscribed, you jumped on over and left me a 5-star review, and better yet, a written review. I am on a mission to let every mom and stepmom know that you can create the life of your dreams. And I need your help to change the world. The world needs us. Thank you so much for subscribing and leaving me a 5-star review. I will see you next week, same time, same place. For more behind the scenes action and to get really up close and personal with me and our beautiful step family, jump on over to Instagram and follow me at The Step Queen. Don't be shy, send me a DM, tag me in your posts, tag me in your stories, let me know what you're up to and what about the podcast has been blowing your mind. I cannot wait to get to know you better, and Instagram is my jam. I love you so much. I love you so much. Make it rain, girlfriend.